Be Your Best You, the Passionate to Purpose podcast with David Delaney. Good morning and welcome. It's Friday. It's the Be Your Best You podcast, where this morning we are joined by Barbara Byrne. Barbara is an inspiring life coach, international co-author and award-winning weight loss consultant. She has worked tirelessly with women and men to coach, inspire and encourage them through their personal transformations for over 10 years, empowering and supporting clients to create change in their relationships with themselves and others, as well as their personal lives to achieve their personal goals. She absolutely loves walking, and being outdoors drives her unique coaching style, and she's passionate about enabling others to find their own way to personal freedom. Barbara knows firsthand the effects of intense grief, traumatic marriage breakdown, and dark depression, and Barbara shares some of that story with us this morning. Barbara, you're very, very welcome. It's great to have you on the podcast this morning.
Thanks very much for having me. Thank you.
No problem at all. Barbara, you are a coach, a weight loss consultant, author. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Okay, well, I suppose my journey would have started with my weight loss journey. I lost almost 6 stone, well, 5 stone, 9 pounds to be precise. Approximately, my journey began almost 11 years ago, and I've been maintaining my weight loss literally for the past almost 10 years. So it took me about a year. As I said, slowly, surely does it, but I got there in the end. But through that, I trained to become a Slim and World consultant when Slim and World was relatively new in Ireland. And I still do it today. I absolutely love it. Very, very, I suppose, enriching to see people literally transform and change their lives. But probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I was already on a bit of a personal development journey, and I always thought I'd like to write a book or maybe share my story. And part of that was freedom from guilt and shame of the past. And part of it was, what would it lead to if I did share my story? Okay. So I seem to randomly see people looking for people in Facebook business groups. And I just saw a lady basically saying, I'm sharing the story of X, Y, and Z in a book. My mentor is looking for 33 women to share theirs. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, why not? So I rang the lady in question, or she got in touch with me through this lady. And I ended up having coaching with her as a result of sharing my story in the book. And during that, I suppose I realized how much deeper I could go with people if I wasn't just doing, because with Slim and World, it's a franchise, and I love the food aspect of it and how that works. And as much as I can go deep with people in a group scenario, I can't go to the deeper levels that's necessary. And I would say for probably most of my members would need it. They may not be ready for it, and that's perfectly okay. But it just means if somebody wants to go deeper into their mindset and what happens behind, because the biggest learning for me was I thought weight loss was all about food. And most people think that, but it's actually about the emotions that's behind that. Why did I basically dumb down my feelings with alcohol, dumb down my feelings with rubbish, takeaways, stuff, basically, because I couldn't cope. So there was a lot more to it than just changing our habits.
So the mindset work then, that probably is a parallel with the coaching work that you do, they bounce off each other, yeah.
Absolutely. And I found, I suppose, the more I learn, the more I want to share it, but I know that I can't share it to that deep level. So what I started to do was to then introduce to my members the fact that I am a life coach, and I can help them, set clearer goals and go deeper with the work behind it to achieve them. Okay. And that it wasn't just about weight loss either.
Okay. And that takes courage, which leads me on to the next thing, Voices of Courage. You were co-author on that book. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as I said, I met Brenda Dempsey. She was introduced to me through another lady in a Facebook group. And I know we haven't had this conversation, but it'll be 27 years ago, actually, this year. Back in 1994, 3 weeks before I got married, my brother was murdered. And the impact that had on my family was just phenomenal. And I went straight into caretaker warrior mode. Who am I going to look after? I was the oldest at home at that time. So I wanted to, I suppose, look after everybody, make sure everybody was okay. That tended to be my role as the oldest girl anyway.
Okay.
But leaving the house, like getting married 3 weeks later was, I don't say it's a mistake, but it's certainly not something that maybe should have happened there and then, because emotionally I was not in that place. And so I often do feel, you know, I moved out of house, I got married and moved to the other side of the city, all in a very big space of time, which are huge emotional, stressful challenges anyway.
Yeah.
But then also dealing with what was happening in my family at the same time. You know, I suppose I used to tell myself I'm fine, I'm fine. So very quickly I realized how anxious I was and how stressed I was. And I was living in that spiral of, I was only just literally coping day to day, but I wasn't actually coping. I put on
Okay.
a mask. I didn't want anyone to realize how unhappy I was or how sad I was, how miserable I was, and how scared I was. I lived in that mode of who's next for such a long, long time. And I suppose food and drink became my crutch as a result of that.
Okay.
And although I always thought I was overweight, I realize now when I look back, I was slightly bigger than my friends who were probably a size 8, and I might have been a size 12. So I wasn't, but I became what I believed I was because I couldn't see beyond where I was at. So it was my first pregnancy that led to a big weight gain. And I felt like there was no way out. I tried lots of different things, but I know now every single thing that's out there works. Whatever it is, it works. But it's about the mindset behind it.
Okay. And would
So,
you say, Barbara, that you hit a rock bottom? Would it be fair to
oh,
say it's just
absolutely. I suppose within a quick space of time, probably before my second daughter came along, I realized there was cracks in the marriage as well, and I didn't have the support. And as much as I say there's cracks in the marriage, I 100% know that I was equally messed up as my husband was at the time, and he had his problems and I had mine, and we literally, well, I wouldn't even say we fell apart. We did kind of grow apart, but I got to the point of I can't do this anymore. And I was always a new year, new me person. And it was quite ironic that it was on New Year's Eve. He came home from work and was whinging and moaning about something. And I just went, I cannot do this anymore. It has
okay?
to stop now. And he did say to me, but this is what you want. And I'm like, surely to God, you can see this is not how life is meant to be lived. I know I'm miserable, and I don't want my daughters growing up thinking that this is what a relationship looks like. I didn't know, you know, like what they say, you don't get the handbook when you become a parent. You don't get a handbook when you get married either. You don't get a
No.
handbook to deal with grief or to deal with loss.
Okay.
So there was a lot of things going on behind the scenes with me, and my awareness was actually being brought to them, and I just knew that I'd had enough, and I
Okay.
couldn't live or exist because I wasn't living. I couldn't exist the way I was
Okay.
existing anymore.
And did you stay there for a while? Because a lot of people, you know, in talking to people, when they hit or when they describe a rock bottom, they go sideways. They dig sideways for a while, and
Yeah.
then something happens that there's a shaft of light, and they look up. So was it that something that you found that you just kind of protected yourself, I suppose, and just curled
Yeah.
up in that space for a while, and then something just one day clicked with you that
Yeah.
okay, I got to see this, and here's a way up.
Yeah. I'd say for about 6 years, I lived in that sideways space because I knew the day my second daughter was born, I felt real pressure the day she was born. I knew I was going to have a section because she was breech. And I always remembered the surgeons behind the door with the hands up. I could see the circles. And basically, they couldn't get the epidural in. And my husband was going, just let them knock you out. And I was like, no, they have taken away every other piece of control from me. I am being awake when my child is born. So I really was I felt I was putting up a fight from then. But the anaesthetist almost whispered in my ear, don't you worry, whatever way you want, it's your body, whatever you want is what we will do. So I insisted on getting lots of punctures in my spine before eventually it worked because I wanted to be awake no matter what. So
Okay.
within that 6 years, I knew that day it was like I remember being in recovery and being in tears, and I remember people coming to see me and being very like why can't I tell them how I feel? I wanted to show how I felt, but I just felt it wasn't right. And after a few days, one of my aunts, who my dad's younger sister, she's only 10 years older than me, she came in to visit me, and she actually said, what's going on? You can tell me now, we're on our own. And I literally poured out, I can't do this anymore.
Okay.
I'm not happy. I don't know how to deal with this.
And were you on your own up to that point, or had you been looking for help or exploring different options, or had you?
I had some experience of, actually, no, at that point in time, I'd probably had a little bit, but because of some of the help that I got, I went in saying, don't tell me I have to forgive, and don't tell me I have to do this. So when I was being led down that road, it's like, nah, that's not working for me. And
Okay.
off I went. But when my youngest daughter was 2, I had a very out of character experience, lost my shit basically in my job. And after 11 years, threw all my toys out of the pram and walked out.
Okay.
And at that point in time, people were coming to me going, I was waiting on that to happen. Waiting on that to happen. I think you might be suffering with depression. Actually, it could be postnatal depression. And I'm like, but my daughter's 2. And they're like, yeah, and look at the state you're in. So I remember I probably cried for about a month after. I went straight to the doctor, did ring my boss, and he kept saying, look, take whatever you need. I always used to say, we grew up together, we got married, we had our kids, we worked together for those important moments in our lives. So I was very reluctant to leave, but at the same time I knew I couldn't stay right then. So he gave me the time I needed to take to step back. And I went from, asking for help to, I remember saying to my mom, I was put on medication, and I remember saying, it's not working, there's something not right, there's a cloud that's just not shifting. I felt almost like things were getting worse rather than better. I remember being sent to a psychiatrist and crying, saying, oh God, I must be really mad. Because that was my view of, if you go to a psychiatrist, you're really seriously messed up. And I was, but I suppose I didn't see it. There was so much emotional stuff from around my brother's death, around my marriage breakdown and good old Catholic Ireland and the things that you should do, and the people pleaser in me staying because of the fear of how am I going to tell my parents. And being from a big family and a big extended family, I was the first one ever to say, I'm out.
Okay. So when you look back at that time, is there a single thing now that you would say to yourself back then? So if you were giving yourself advice in the perspective, having gained the perspective that you have through what you've been through, is there a single piece of advice that you would tell yourself?
Yeah, go with your gut. And when you first think it's time to go, reach out for help as soon as you feel that. I didn't. I kept telling myself there was something wrong with me, and we would sort it out. And the biggest learning for me was I was looking outside. If I'm in a new house, if I have a new car, when I go on holidays, when this happens, I'll be okay. When that happens, I'll be okay. So when I realized that I had to go inside, that was where the scary stuff began, because I had to confront the pain. I had to confront the feelings and bring them all up and out. And that was a challenge, to say the least.
Yeah. And I think a lot of clients, and this is, I suppose, your experience is fantastic in helping your clients, because I would expect a lot of people, who play the if-when game. If I do that, when, if when, and that's a circle, and yourself working with people in I suppose the weight loss situation, to use that, it's if I lose this, I will be better. And then as you get to that stage, if I do this, and it's so that's where the important work that comes in, I suppose, with mindset and is there any important truth that few people agree with you on? Is there something that in your life you think, okay, this is my truth, this is my belief, there's people out there that say no, but you truly believe in it yourself?
So a truth that's in me that others don't see.
Yeah.
I would probably say the whole thing of being who you are and not worrying what other people think. It took me a long time because I was such a people pleaser. And I think part of it happened naturally as the oldest girl. My mom had twins when I was 12. So I got my baby doll in real life as a 12-year-old.
Okay.
And I felt a big, it was, to me, it was very important to me to be the big sister that looked after my little brothers and sister. I've only one sister, I have 6 brothers. So it was very important to me. So although I say I stepped into it, I didn't realize what I was taking on. It was an automatic thing. So to be able to then stand back and say, well, you know, like my mom would often say, God, I probably should have done this, or I should have. And I'm like, but no, ma'am, you did the best with what you had where you were at. And that's what I had to learn. And so did I. So there wasn't a thing of blaming. It's that I say to my mom, we accept that. I don't like to use the word that we're all victims of our upbringing but we are all conditioned by what our parents only knew, and they're doing the best with what they've got. But now what I see is I have a chance to change that. And that was so important for me because I have 2 girls. That was really important to me that they had that power of belief that whatever they want to achieve, they can. And don't let other people influence you, because I allowed other people to influence me because of Catholic Ireland or because of who will say what. You know, there was a time I always remember when I first split up with my husband, and if I was out with other couples, there was nearly this thing of don't speak to her husband because she's nearly giving you daggers, like, because there was so many different dynamics that came out of it. Whereas they didn't realize that I was petrified to even go there again because I was still trying to figure out who I was.
Okay.
That took me a long time to figure out what was important to me, what you know, where I stood on things, and to actually be able to say and not worry about what other people think. It's an ongoing joke among my siblings. What mad thing is she up to now? But now I'm nearly going, guess what I'm doing now?
Yeah.
And they're going, oh, she's mad. And I just go, yeah. So
Yeah.
I accept if that's how they view it, that's okay.
Okay.
Whereas I would have been worried about telling them I'm going to do this or I'm going to try that. And if they would kind of say, do you not think at your age you should be doing, do you know, whereas I'm going, I'm grateful I'm alive. So I'm grateful that I'm going to be able to push my body to do X, Y, and Z or try X, Y, and Z, where they all think I'm crazy. But that's okay. I don't mind that now.
12-year-old Barbara, tell me, 12-year-old Barbara, what you wanted to be when you grew up.
I wanted to be a teacher.
Why?
Why? Because I had some really nice teachers, I think, as a child. That in particular, I had one teacher for 2 years. I still remember as clear as day, Linda MacDonald, Miss MacDonald. She was a lovely lady. She brought us, and it's really interesting now that I think about it. She brought us. Is it Tiglin? You know, she was an Onoiga youth leader, and she brought us hosteling. I was trying to think what the word was, hosteling. And now when I look back, that was probably my first introduction to nature and outdoors, something that now is such a powerful part of, and it's the core of my being now. If I don't get outside, I'm a little bit crazy, you know. But she had a really positive impact on me as a young child. But when I left school, because I was one of 8 children, and at that time grants and all that stuff didn't exist, I never actually said to my parents, I'd love to be a teacher. I'm going to need X, Y, and Z in terms of money. But because there was 8 children, I just thought, I can't ask. So I didn't.
Okay.
So I just accepted, sure, look, I'm working part-time. I'll pay 80 quid, do the secretariat course and see where I go from there. So that was kind of the attitude I took.
Okay. Talk to me about the outdoors. You've mentioned it a bit in our conversation. What does the outdoors do for you? Is it escape? Is it space to breathe? Is it time out? What do you love about being in nature?
All of those. It's I think it's freedom. One of my core values is freedom. And when I talk about freedom, it was that real. I kind of got a bit emotional there when I thought about it. Freedom from my mind and my body, because I was trapped, and my life. I felt trapped in all of those aspects as a young woman, and I didn't know how to find that peace. And I got a glimpse of it, as I said, as that young child. But when I was in a really bad place, age 36, my parents insisted I go to Lourdes with them. And I was like, I'm having none of that religious crap. And that's exactly how I felt at that time. And I was like, but I can't. Where am I going to stay? I remember crying to my mom, you can share a room with me and your dad. Now, I was 36 years of age. My marriage had just broken down. I was emotionally and physically in a really bad place. But I needed my mommy and daddy to mind me, and so I went. And
Okay.
while I was there, we went to a place called the City of the Poor. And I remember sitting at an outdoor mass, and the leaves were falling. It was October. The leaves were falling. There was like these tiered seats. A conker hit me on the head, and all of a sudden I got this mad emotional rush. I felt my brother's kind of nearly going, ha ha. He was a great messer. So he was always winding me up for being the serious one. And I just felt his presence nearly like the knock on the head was like the clatter that he would have given me as a teenager. He was only a year and a bit older than me. So that was the point when I realized I like being here. And I remember saying to my mom, I'm going up there again. So that was kind of the start of it. And then, like, I lived near the sea, so I would have walked there as a teenager, but I don't think I valued it the way I would value it now. Let's put it that way. But back in 2016, one of the things after I lost my weight was one day I'd love to do a Camino. That's how it started. And my family, yet again, you're not going off on that thing on your own. That's kind of the impression I was getting. So I had met Linda Keating from the Marie Keating Foundation when we were doing fundraising with Slimming World. And she was apologizing that she was rushing off to go training for the Camino. And I was like, oh my God, I'd love to do that. And she said, well, why don't you? So, I don't know. So I had raised money for something else. And one day up cropped this thing in Facebook, you know, the way Facebook is listening and Google is listening, something to do with going on the Camino and raising money. And if you're interested, send an email. So I literally sent the email there and then. And after I sent it, I said to my partner, I think I might be going on the Camino in September. I think I might need someone to mind the girls. How do you feel about that? And he's kind of going, huh? What? But he had always been, I have to say, where I said I went from the case of not feeling supported. I do often say to my partner, I feel like you're shoving me off to do my thing, but I'm leaving you behind. And he's like, no, once you're happy, I'm happy. You work away.
Excellent.
So in September 2016, I turned up at the airport with 11 strangers.
We went.
And I went. We just did a week. It was the most empowering, amazing experience of my life. And I've been obsessed with the Camino ever since.
Excellent. When you're in nature, Barbara, do you listen to music or do you just listen to the sounds around you?
No, I don't listen to anything except whatever's happening. I used
Okay.
to, when I started to run first, I used to listen to stuff because I felt I needed that motivation. But now, no, I see things that I never noticed before. So whether it's the way the leaves are falling, it could be the squirrels jumping from tree to tree and branch to branch. I love the little robin redbreast. I always feel like there's somebody who's gone before me is just
Okay.
give me a little reminder that they're there. Um, Sometimes I dance in puddles like the kids do because it's a bit of crack. If I have the right gear on, I'll dance in the puddles. If I get wet, then I'm literally, I'm
That's
like,
it.
ah, feckature, I'm wet now. Let's just
Yeah.
go for it. There's
Oh,
just that sense of freedom. I
okay.
can't explain it. I just feel free.
And do you have a favorite song? If you were to pick a favorite song,
Yeah, Don't Stop Me Now
okay.
by
I'm
Queen.
I'm not going
Yeah.
to ask why because I mean I'm a heavy Queen
It's my
fan.
power song. I don't because I want to. I feel that now I can be unstoppable. I should say I am unstoppable.
Okay.
Um, but I feel now that if I put my mind to it, I'm not going to allow whatever circumstances are outside of me to stop me from moving forward and trying to. Well, it's not even being trying to be, but it is trying to a certain extent to be the better version of me where I can. And if that means, you know, showing the vulnerable side, well then so be it. Because
Okay.
when I first shared my story, it did, that was the first step to that sense of freedom, you know.
Okay.
So being able to share that without any fear, you know, if somebody goes, oh my God, or you know, because I only had this discussion with my friend this morning, people would have said things like there's no smoke without fire. And I felt like I don't need to defend my brother. He was never in trouble in his life. It was very random. Um, and the guy that actually did it, you know, he was as high as a kite in drugs. He had his own issues. So I have made peace with that now because I couldn't allow that to it seriously messed up my head for so long that I couldn't allow that to continue. And it was only with the stuff that I learned, you know, accepting where I'm at and accepting others as they are, that allowed me to have that peace and acceptance.
Barbara, tell me who inspires you and why.
Oh, well, I suppose the first one was probably my girls, my daughters. That's where my first inspiration or my first awareness of being inspired, because I wanted to show them, I suppose, not to accept things that they weren't happy with. And it wasn't anything about dissing their dad, because that's something I feel really strongly about, mothers that turn their children against their fathers. It really upsets me. So whatever my stuff is with him, it's my stuff with him. So why should I mess their heads up as well? So it would have started with my children, but I suppose bigger people that are out there that are more well known, Brené Brown, because she's all about the courage. Oprah Winfrey. There's ordinary people that inspire me as well. You know, like I have a nephew who was born last year with a congenital heart problem, and he had open heart surgery at 13 days old. Like, I think he's amazing. My mom and dad, to have survived and managed to stay together, one of the questions they are asked on a constant basis is, how do couples survive losing their son the way you did? And as much as they have their own demons around that, they're great crack. You know, they know how to live. Like when we spoke about the most recent lockdown, my dad said, sure, that's grand, me and your ma have a love in. Do you know, so to be married for 50, how many years are they married now? 1968. So they're married 53 years, and to still have that crack. Now, they both are very open in that they've had their highs and they've had their lows, but they still like each other. And I think that is inspirational. You know, that, you know, I would, like, I always just say I'm lucky to have found the partner I found, and maybe I don't always appreciate him, and I do tell him that sometimes it drives me nuts, but I know that he has my back, and that he basically supports me, and whatever harebrained bad thing I come up with, he's there going, that's what you want, go on, go for it, you know. So I've lots of really positive people, and that's the big thing for me, surrounding myself with positive people, because they're the people that are going to spur you on, inspire you, uplift you, motivate you, and basically tell you go for it. They're not going to say, don't do that. And although maybe friends and family and people that you know love you, they don't always understand you. So they don't always get why you're driven to do whatever it is that you do. And if they think it's mad, that's okay as well, as I said earlier. So there's lots of people that inspire and motivate me on a regular basis. Yeah.
Barbara, we're going to leave it there. I just want to thank you for joining us this morning. It's been absolutely wonderful to talk to you. And Barbara, stay unstoppable.
Thank you.
And that's it for another week. Thanks for joining us this morning, and do join us next time on Be Your Best You. Have a good week.